Hey everyone, David Tarras from the Rossen Law Firm, head of our federal criminal defense practice. Today's video, we're going to be continuing our discussion in our series about PPP fraud, or Paycheck Protection Program fraud. This was funds that were allocated to individuals who requested this money as part of the COVID-19 pandemic relief that was offered by the federal government. Now we're talking about, with PPP specifically, roughly $800 to $900 billion in government money that was issued to requested borrowers, to individuals, and what experts, defense attorneys, and prosecutors believe might be as much as $80 to $100 billion worth of fraud as it relates to PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program money. So what we're going to be talking about in today's video is the nature of the fraud itself. What kind of allegations is the government making? What kind of fraud is allegedly being committed that we're seeing, that we are protecting our clients from, that we are seeing other individuals across the nation committing as it relates to the PPP fraud, the PPP program. And understanding the fraud itself is really, really important for us as a defense attorney, and for you when deciding whether or not to be proactive about hiring experts in federal criminal defense like the Rossen Law Firm, because you need to understand what to look for to know whether or not you should be proactive. And if you have any doubts whatsoever, you need to contact us. Two general areas where we're seeing fraud with the PPP program. First is in the application itself. Second is in the way the funds, if you were granted funds, are being spent. We want to focus on the early warning signs so that you, when watching this video, can say, if you think this might apply to you, if you think there might have been an issue in your application, if you think there might have been an issue in the way you spent the money, that you can know that you need to contact us at the Rossen Law Firm so we can check for ourselves and prepare you for a possible investigation and possible charges, and do everything in our power as experts to prevent that. So what are the major types of fraud that the government alleges is being committed as it relates to the PPP program? We see misrepresentations in the application itself. In these applications, you have to state the number of employees that you have, the gross salary of the employees, income of the company. There are different certifications that you have to make when making this loan, requesting this loan, in order to get these funds. The government pretty clearly can see and are really, really looking into whether or not any misrepresentations were made in order to induce a lender, whether it's a bank or other program, to provide borrowers, our clients, potential clients, with these funds. So the first place we really look is in the application itself. The next place that we look, as far as broad categories go, is in the way the money is spent. There are specific guidelines that were laid out for borrowers or potential borrowers when requesting a PPP or Paycheck Protection Program funding in order to make them eligible or qualified to receive that funding in the first place. 60% of the funds have to be on payroll. Majority of the funds have to be spent on costs related to the business, salary, things of that nature, and other costs in order to keep the business alive, in order to keep your employees or yourself or your company afloat. PPP is just one of the different types of economic or pandemic-related disaster relief that was provided, but it seems to be the biggest hot-button issue, the biggest loan relief fund issue for the Department of Justice, and what they're cracking down and investigating the most, because it was the easiest to get in the first place, and because the pool of available money was smaller, which means it ran out quicker, which means a lot of people were upset that didn't get the money. A lot of complaints were made regarding fraud, thousands and thousands of complaints, roughly 55,000 total, and the government is really, really cracking down on this. So we see lying on the application itself. We see falsifying tax records. We see using shell companies or creating shell companies in order to make it look on the application like you have a company with employee that would be eligible for funds. We see individuals who are reaching out to our clients or our potential clients and other individuals, asking them if they would let this individual fill out an application for them using their business information, and then in turn, if the funds are received, giving them a percentage of the individual who requested to fill out the application, giving them a percentage of the proceeds. That's a kickback. That's illegal. That's one of the other areas that we see. We're seeing companies that are not shell companies, companies that exist but were either unregistered or had lapsed and were not operating shortly or in the time leading up to requesting the loan, and then all of a sudden being reincorporated right before the actual loan was requested. That's a red flag for the government. That doesn't mean fraud itself, but these are red flags that you have to think about. Might this apply to me? Because if so, the Department of Justice may very well be looking at your loan, be looking at your conduct. You need a lawyer to step in and protect you. The government investigates, the Department of Justice investigates PPP fraud in a variety of ways. Some of our clients have called us and said, "Hi, David, I've received what's called a target letter, or a letter in the mail from the Department of Justice or from the United States Attorney's Office saying that they are, in fact, the target of an investigation or grand jury investigation." That one's pretty clear. Okay, if somebody comes to us, if you've received a target letter, you need to contact us right away so that we can then respond to the prosecutor who issued that target letter and start making sure that you're protected, asserting your rights, and that we handle everything going forward so you don't have to. Okay, super important. Target letters are pretty clear. The other form that we see after target letters very commonly is a subpoena or a grand jury subpoena. Subpoenas are issued for individuals who might not be the target of a government investigation. The prosecutor might not think that they have enough evidence based on what they've reviewed to indict or criminally charge that person for PPP fraud in federal court, but they believe the person did have some exposure to possible criminal activity, that person might have been a co-conspirator with other individuals who are considered targets. And we see subpoenas usually to businesses, sometimes directed to individuals, for our clients that provide information to the investigating body, whether it's the FBI, whether there's a United States attorney or a Department of Justice trial attorney already assigned, whether it's the Office of Inspector General, OIG, various government agencies that are all working together in a coordinated task force to investigate PPP fraud. So if you received a subpoena, you need to contact us right away. Other times, it's not as clear, but it's important to be very proactive, and we do get a lot of calls from clients who have said, "Hey, I went to my bank, or I got a letter from my bank and found out that my account has been frozen. I don't know why that is." Well, one of my first questions, because of how prominent the investigation and these strike forces that are popping up every day related to PPP fraud are, is, did you request a Paycheck Protection Program loan? And if so, tell me about it. Let's talk about it. How did you spend the money? What did you put on your application in order to get those funds? How much money did you receive? Because that's a very important aspect as well. When the bank has frozen your account, what's happening is they have received a subpoena from an assistant United States attorney or another law enforcement agency that is investigating your account and your PPP loan, and they are asking for the financial documents, and they're going to start going through the records, requesting all of the records to see how the money was spent. They're going to already have looked at your application most likely, and there might be some red flags in the application, which we'll talk about momentarily, but they're going to be going through your bank records, and they're going to freeze your accounts. And they're also going to freeze any accounts where any money that you received from the PPP loan might have gone into. Okay, we see very often our clients will say, "Well, the PPP relief funds went into my business account, but then I moved some funds into my personal checking or savings account. It was still for my business, but it left the account where the funds came in." That's a red flag to the government, because they look at that as someone who was requesting money for their paycheck protection for their business, and then when the money moves from one account to another, major red flags go off. Sometimes major red flags go off in the bank's internal process and the bank staff alone, and they then submit a tip of fraud to the government. So if you get any letter or any notice that any accounts associated, any bank accounts associated with money that was received from the Paycheck Protection Program has been frozen, you need to contact an attorney. You need to contact us at the Rossen Law Firm right away. Big picture when it comes to being proactive about investigations. We're talking now about the early stages of a PPP fraud investigation. What are the red flags? What should you, the viewer, be thinking about when you're saying, how did my company, how did I as an individual or as a company go about the process of requesting this loan? And do I have something to fear? Can I fear an investigation? Should I fear an investigation? And should I be contacting the Rossen Law Firm? There are a few major categories, a few major common red flags that we see. First, did your company's application for the PPP loan comply with the terms of the program? That one is straightforward. There are specific guidelines that were set out about how the money was supposed to be spent, how the money was supposed to be requested. If you falsified records, if you falsified tax records, if you made certifications, if we're talking about PPP, that you had a certain number of employees or your company was bringing in a certain income or you had a certain salary that you had to meet in order for your company to stay afloat, if you had any misrepresentations in that, you need to contact us right away. Second, do you have any documentation to show that your company was compliant with the mandatory requirements of requesting the PPP loan? Because if you've been contacted by the government and if you're looking for defense counsel, what we're going to do here is we're going to do our own audit. We're going to try and do it faster, and that's why it's so important for you to be proactive so we can look at your documents ourselves, match them up to the representations and the certifications that you or your company made in the application, and be prepared to either show the government that no, they're wrong, which they very often are wrong and do get this tunnel vision and jump to conclusions, or if it looks like there was major discrepancies between your company's actual financial numbers and what you certified was true on your application, we need to know that as well so we can cut this off and protect you and assert your constitutional rights to remain silent and not speak to law enforcement, not speak to a federal prosecutor, while we on our end dig into it further and have our own communications with the prosecutor in hopes of mitigating any potential exposure that you might have. Another early warning sign, another red flag that we try and come in and be proactive about with our clients is to look and see how the funds were allocated between accounts that your company might have or that you might have as a business account, in a personal checkings or a savings account. We want to go in ourselves and track the way the money moved so that if you are contacted or you are approached by the feds, by the government, that we can go and show them our own pattern that we have and that we've created to say, no, feds, you've got it wrong. This is actually how the money moved. And even though it went into a personal checking or a personal savings, this was all still for the purpose and still compliant within the PPP program. Fourth, did you use any of the funds for unauthorized or inappropriate means under the program? Some of these are very clear. If our clients come to us and say, look, I requested these funds for my company, 20% went to payroll, not 60%, and I did purchase or use money to pay off a loan on a vehicle that I had that was unrelated to the company business, or I flat out used this money to pay my mortgage or to pay off other debts or pay my credit card unrelated to my business, unrelated to the purpose of the PPP program, which is paycheck protection, then right then and there, you have to be super proactive because the government is going to have a clear case. They're going to come at you hard and they're going to try and charge you and prosecute you quick. We need to come on board fast at that point so we can start mitigating your exposure in that end right away. The other common thing that we see and that the government is investigating is, let's say a friend or a family member came to you and said, hey, Josh, have you heard of the PPP program that's being offered by the government right now? You have a business, you might be eligible for some of this money. And you say, no, I haven't heard of it. And Josh says, let me do it for you. Would you mind if I just get some of your information and I can make this application for you? Everything on the books, everything's filled out correctly. You receive the funds, you intend to spend them on your company, but then Josh says, oh, I did this application for you. You got the funds because of me. Do you mind just maybe paying me 10%, 5%, 50% of the amount of the loan that you received for my help? Might sound harmless to you, but that's why you need us, because that is what's known as a federal kickback, and that's illegal. If you feel that any of these red flags or these warning signs might apply to you, if you see this video and say, look, I think I'm okay, I think I did everything right, but the government is just coming so hard. David's telling me that they're looking at everybody, they're auditing everybody. Call us. Let us, as the experts, look into your loan. Let me look into your application, into the way you spent these funds. Certainly, if you have any indication that you may be under investigation or you may have been contacted by the federal government already, you need to call us right away so we can protect you, we can assert your rights, and do everything we can to keep your case from going to a courtroom, from you being prosecuted so you can achieve your best future.